exactly what we learned. And it works, doesn't it? It works. There you go. Fantastic. Well, guess what today? Today is about facing your fears. Are you ready? So, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Tony McAleer. Yeah, the man in the pink shirt. You are in for a treat. Yeah. He is a colorful man, not just with the shirt. You will find out shortly. He is also a man in high demand worldwide right now. This man has just been on CBC radio, and they're playing the interview over right across the country. He's been on CBC television of late. He's been in India radio, and they want him to come back. All about the topic you're about to hear. There are newspapers seeking to interview him. There's all kinds of requests from around the world. So what you're about to hear is changing the world, ladies and gentlemen. So let me tell you a little bit about Tony. Tony is a single father of 2 young adults. I know them well. They deeply love him as he deeply loves them. Tony is a superb financial advisor. He's also going to change the world in that whole expertise. And believe me, I know how good he is because I am his accountant. You know, your hairdresser knows for sure, well, your accountant knows even better. You know, I'm really lucky. I've got some wonderful clients, ladies and gentlemen. It's a fun day for me each and every day. And Tony is also a superb soccer coach. He coaches a team in the same club that I do. We share our coaching duties quite often, and we back each other up. In fact, the last 2 championship games in the last 2 years, I had to be away. He coached them both games. They were tough games, and we won them both. Thank you, Tony. So Tony's message today, as you'll soon find out, is about anger and hatred moving into forgiveness and awareness and love. It is a profound story. A story that you're going to love to hear, a story the whole world wants to hear. This is my dear friend, my accountability partner, and you all know that soulmates are 2 people committed to helping each other heal and grow. Well, Tony and I are truly soulmates, but Tony wants you to know it was without the sex, okay? Just so that you got that right. A man I dearly love, a man whose message I adore, a man whose courage is immense. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a hearty welcome. Please stand and get Tony McAleer.
So far this weekend, haven't we? Yeah! One of the things that keeps coming up is belief systems and limiting beliefs. And we've talked a little bit about how to get rid of them, but have you ever thought about where you get them in the first place?
Yes.
They're given to us. Now what kind of a gift is that? I can remember sitting around the Sunday dinner table My dad has had his fourth martini, and he gives me a gift. I open it up. Thanks, Dad. I can feel worthless like all the other kids at school. It's a terrible gift. It's more like a venereal disease than a gift. I think they should call it emotionally transmitted diseases. I know, my parents gave me crabs. They gave me crappy relationship and business systems. Crabs. But I want you to think about what your limiting beliefs are and where you got them from. Perhaps you, like me, were bullied when you were younger. Who here has been bullied? How did that make you feel? Worthless? Afraid? Powerless? Those were some of mine. Maybe you weren't bullied. Maybe you were just bossed around in the workplace. Or perhaps, like most of us, we got them from our parents. And there's two types of belief systems that we have. There's the ones we know about. It's usually a pretty short list. And there's the ones we don't know about. And those belief systems can color and shape every decision that we make throughout our entire lives. I'll tell you what some of mine were. Powerlessness. Insignificant. Unlovable. Seeking approval, because if I couldn't get it from my dad, I needed to get it somewhere else. Anger. And I want to share with you today my journey from feeling powerless to feeling powerful to actually connecting with my authentic self and understanding what my true, authentic power is. Would you guys like to hear that journey? Yeah! My mother was pretty controlling. So it was always very important for me growing up to assert my independence and do the opposite of them. That's another interesting thing about belief systems, is we either copy what was modeled for us, or we do the exact opposite. And so while my parents listened to classical music, I listened to angry punk rock music. That was going to be my choice. I'm not listening to that. I make my own choice. And I started to listen to that music, and I got a sense of fear and notoriety. There's a bit of power that comes with wearing boots and dressing like a punk rocker and listening to the music and the anger. And it also vibed with me because I was feeling pretty angry at the same time. And I thought that's what power was in this very small way. And that feeling of power lasted for a little while, but it wore off. I had to take it up another step. Why be a punk rocker when you can be a skinhead? I was a skinhead. I wore the boots, I had the jacket, I shaved my head, I drank a lot of beer, and I got in a lot of fights. And I hurt an awful lot of people. But most skinheads, believe it or not, aren't very political. They're just thugs. So why be just an apolitical thug when I can be a neo-Nazi thug? Because that feeling of power, that notoriety and fear that I generated, wore off. I had to take it to another level. And while being a neo-Nazi skinhead, I wasn't even happy being there. I had to be a leader of neo-Nazi skinheads and a recruiter. And in that world, I got introduced to the ideology. And when that ideology, with my anger and where I was as a skinhead, met my high intellect, I don't know it's arrogant of me to say that, but how do I know I had a high intellect? Because it's what my teacher used to tell me when I was 11, after he bent me over the desk and hit me with a meter stick for getting below 75%. The mixture of that ideology, my anger, and my intellect was explosive. And it was no longer, I gave up being a skinhead. I put away the boots and the jacket and let my hair grow. And I put on a suit and I put on a tie. And I got involved with some of the most notorious, most extreme white supremacist groups in the United States, Aryan nations, white Aryan resistance. And I had to keep ramping it up because I thought that fear and notoriety was power. At the absolute height of my arrogance, I was on the national talk show circuit. I've done the Montel Williams show twice. And I thought that's what power was. That fear and notoriety. But it wasn't. It's false. I had my head so far up my ego. I wasn't able to connect with myself. How could I connect with somebody else? And I've talked a lot in the last couple of minutes about my pain. And I want to address for a moment the pain of the victims and of the hurt and the damage and what I put into the quantum field. I want to address that for a minute because I did do significant damage, both physically and with the words and attitudes, the multiplier effect, all of that. I was the resonance equivalent of BP oil in the Gulf. Caused a lot of pain. But at the time, I didn't care. I couldn't feel connected to myself. I could never feel connected to another human being. And what was more important to me was avoiding my pain, even if it meant the expense of creating pain for others. Like a general observing a war from 1,000 miles away, none of it was real, the suffering, the pain. It didn't exist. All that mattered was me avoiding my pain. Do you want to know how I got from this place, that place where I was at, to this place right here in front of you? Yeah. To do that, I have to go back 21 years, no, 23, to when I was 21. I was a young 21-year-old, involved in the movement, up to my eyeballs. And my girlfriend of 3 months, who I was breaking up with for the 5th time that day, we were worse than Ronnie and Sammy on the Jersey Shore. And she says to me the 2 words that no young 20-year-old man wants to hear. Can you have a guess of what that might be? I'm pregnant. Exactly. But this was, my parents hated this girlfriend. But I'm going to have my choice, just like my music. Right? You pick the opposite, of course. And she carried low and wore baggy sweatshirts. And I was really avoiding the conversation with my parents because they hated her so much. And so she was able to go to some family functions with the baggy sweatshirts, and nobody knew the difference. But we finally got to the day where I can't avoid the conversation anymore. I have to tell my parents. So I pick up the phone. And I go, "Hello, Mom? Yeah, it's Tony. Yeah, everything's great. I just want to tell you, Michelle's pregnant." And what comes out of the phone is a complete stream of the most vehement profanity I've ever heard, uttered from a middle-aged woman. I'm going to tell you a little something about my mom. Me and my brother, she's a middle-aged English woman. Some of you know her. She's been to many of the programs. Me and my brother used to call her the Beak, because she was always beaking us. "Tony, you can't do that. You can't do that. You ruined your life. Oh, she's terrible for you. She's going to get pregnant. You ruined your life. You ruined your life." So that's what I got on the end of the phone. "You idiot. You ruined your life. Oh, you idiot." And I'm not going to repeat the other words that she said. I hear that the profanity fading off to the distance. My dad picks up the phone. "Tony, what's your mother all upset about?" "It's Michelle, she's pregnant." My dad's he's a doctor, he's a psychiatrist. That's a whole other story. "It's Michelle, she's pregnant." "Oh, well, how pregnant is she?" "Oh, she's very pregnant." I said to him. He goes, "Well, how far along actually is she?" And I said, and I was really crapping myself at this point. "She's about 7 minutes apart. I'm calling from St. Paul's Hospital." That is a true story. As entertaining as that story is, the real magical moment happened about an hour later. And I went to the delivery room to watch my daughter be born. And when she was born, and the nurse handed me the baby, and I held her for the first time, she was trying to open her eyes, and her face was like, and her eyes opened, and I knew that my face was the first face in her life that she would see, and that she was truly helpless. And for the first time in my life, I realized it's one thing for me to be reckless with my own life, but it wasn't fair for me to be reckless with hers. And that was the first moment where a couple of things happened. One, holding this tiny, helpless little child, incapable of hate, knowing what power was for the first time. And power is the choice and the ability not to harm. And I connected with this little girl in a way that I've never connected with another human being. And my understanding of connection went from my ego into my heart. And she taught me to love her. My son was born 15 months later. And he too taught me to love again. Because I got to love him and parent him the way that I had always wanted to be loved and parented. I bought him the Tonka backhoe. And I'll tell you the thing about loving children. They're safe to love. They're not going to reject you. And allowing myself to love them, I opened up my heart, and my life started to change. My relationship started to change. My business started to change. And I had no idea what was going on. I drifted out of the movement. I knew that day was the beginning of me leaving the movement. I didn't know how it was going to happen. It just did. And it was a very magical moment that it happened. Years later, I met a mentor, Dov, ironically Jewish. The universe has a strange way of working things, but I was open to it at that point. I did mind mastery. I worked a little bit one-on-one with Dov. And I learned the science and the processes and the tools to help me identify what my limiting beliefs were and how to change them. I understood that what was truly an accident, it really was an accident literally, back here at the hospital, that magical moment, I understood why and how it happened, and that you could choose to have those magical moments. Think about that for a second. If you could choose to eliminate some of your limiting beliefs and have those magical moments. Now, the first time that I went, I've been to Mind Mastery 4 times. The first time I went, I wanted to work on the limiting beliefs that I knew about. So the first one, money, business, and I did that. And then within the first year, the first quarter of the first year after I did that, I did as much business as I did in the previous year. Being someone greedy, I went back to the trough. Let's take on relationships. And the relationships with my family, particularly my children, improved drastically. I sent my daughter, and she went from failing school in grade 11, well, halfway through, she was getting 35%, not hanging around with the greatest crowd, living out her limiting beliefs, to within two and a half years, she's now attending one of the top 5 universities in the UK. And I have to keep coming back to the program so I can afford to pay for it. But it's the limiting beliefs we don't know about. And I've shown you how the limiting beliefs that I was not aware of anything that I was doing as far as a belief was concerned. And I've actually looked at it after all the work I've done with Dov, and I line it up and look at it in terms of what were the limiting beliefs that I mentioned at the beginning. I felt powerless, insignificant, unlovable, seeking approval. So how did those things play out? There's nothing more unlovable than a neo-Nazi skinhead. And I spent my life, that decade, communicating to the world that they were unlovable. That I would take their rights away and make them powerless. And that approval of my father I was seeking, getting his disapproval was better than getting his non-approval. My dad was bombed by the Germans in Liverpool in World War II. Yet there I am, the irony, aligning myself with the ideology that did it. Because I would rather have his disapproval than his indifference. And when I look at it in hindsight, how it all pieces together, I go, wow, those 5, 6 limiting beliefs, and my choices, I just want to make this very clear. Everything I did, I chose to do. And I take responsibility for the pain and the suffering and the damage to communities that I did. What I want to ask you is, what limiting beliefs do you have that you aren't aware of? And what possibly could those limiting beliefs be doing to your life? How are they coloring all of the decisions that you make? If you'd like to find out the answer to that question, I highly suggest you do what I did and attend Mind Mastery. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal program. And if it wasn't for Mind Mastery and the Core Affluence program, that I wouldn't have gone from that thug to the place where I am now, where I'm stepping out of the security of my anonymity. It's so long ago, nobody knows or remembers what I did. But for my sense of forgiveness and compassion, for myself and for others, and for healing the communities that I harm, I'm compelled to speak publicly about this to avoid a repeat for other people. So I want to thank you very much, and I'm very grateful for your support. It's not easy to stand up here and share with you what I shared with you, but you guys have made it a safe place for me to do so. And I want to thank you, and again encourage you. Mind Mastery, it will change your life. Wow.